And once we get to that point, we're going to have a very good test of the more conspiratorial view that the medical emergency that happened in 2020 was really an excuse to print money because of the apocalypse of 2019. Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor. You may have seen on the Arcadia Economics channel, if you haven't seen it yet, it should be up today, that my final silver report has been published up there, and I will be moving it over here. I thank Chris for the opportunity he has given me over these last 3 years, I think it's been, to give my silver Torah, my silver philosophy over on his channel. I think it was a big success, and I still got this little Bernanke helicopter Ben from Chris, and I will keep it on my shelf for as long as protons don't decay, which I think is permanently. It's gonna last a lot longer than I will. I'm gonna be dead in a few decades, along with the rest of us watching this video. There's a morbid thought. Well, it's just that Yom Kippur is coming, and it's a pretty scary day, especially with what's going on in the world. And I think the end game will hit in the year 5785, and I'll say more about that at the end of this video. But for now, I have noticed that all of my ramblings on the repo markets and the clogs and the plumbing and all the esoteric nonsense that I talk about on this channel all the time, the mainstream media is starting to pick up on it. By starting, I mean at the more scholarly corners of the mainstream financial news media, which is not that great, but it's a little bit marginally better. Marginal utility is like an Austrian thing. So it's marginally better than the crap like CNN and Fox Business and all this other garbage. But so, point is, I went into Zero Hedge this morning, as I am wont to do, and I find this. Top article: former Fed trader warns we are this close to another repo crisis. I don't know what this is, but I think we're close too. So I look at the little subtitle here: the sensitivity of SOFR to reserves correlation signaled nearing L-chlor. L-chlor. L-chlor.
Here on Marklar, everyone and everything is referred to as Marklar.
Take me to your L-chlor. We sense a similar dynamic is present today. Mark Cabana, or as I call him, Mark Copacabana, the repo guru of Bank of America, whose name I am familiar with because I researched this crap. And so what do? I go to Google News and I put in some keywords. Mark Cabana, SOFR, L-chlor. Let's see. Whoa, look at that. Could it be that one? Probably. Let's click on it. And what do we have as the headline? Well, is a repeat of the 2019 repo crisis brewing, pain and suffering. That is so clever. I love this guy, Robin Wigglesworth. He's got a perfect name for funny sounding financial news articles, and he's got this little cartoon here. I really like this guy. I could be friends with this guy. I should call him up. Anybody got a connection to Robin Wigglesworth? I really want to get to know this man. So we have here boo, nothing, boo, nothing, boo, nothing. SOFR just spiked by the most since 2020. That is very clever. He's basically saying everything I've been saying on the Endgame Investor in this one little article, thanks to Mark Cabana, Mark Copacabana, who is now saying this on Bank of America. We'll get to his paragraph in a second. At the end of September, there was a big spike in the secured overnight finance rate. That's the SOFR. That's the repo rate that I talk about all the time. This may already be putting you to sleep, but it's potentially a big deal, so please stick around. It's not putting me to sleep. I'm really excited by this crap, and so I'm going to stick around. So going down to the third paragraph here, he says, here you can see how SOFR generally traded around the central point of the Federal Reserve's interest rate corridor and fell when the Fed rate cut rates by 50 basis points in September. But on the last day of the month, it suddenly spiked. Well, you can see that little spike here with this thing. Oh my gosh. The thing is, we see since July here that the repo rate has gotten a lot more volatile, a lot less stable. And this here is the 50 basis point cut. And here is the jump in repo rates on September 30th and October 1st, above the Fed's target range of what is now 5% of the upper corridor. And it hit 5.05%. So it seems like the standing repo facility does not work quite very well. The key is that Cabana now realizes he may have been wrong and that I may have been right. He mentioned me by name. He didn't really. I'm just saying that just to inflate my own ego because that's all I care about, really. Cabana says he was initially too hasty in dismissing the spike as driven by a short-term collateral shortage and unusually large amounts of window dressing by banks. Meaning he's saying he thought initially that this spike was only because banks tend to stuff money into the reverse repo facility at year ends and quarter ends, as we saw on September 30th, which was the quarter end. But he thinks now that it's more serious than that. So he says here in a note published yesterday, this is Robin Wigglesworth talking. In a note published yesterday, Cabana admits to overlooking something potentially more ominous. Reserves seeping out of the banking system. Yes, this is where I talk about bank reserves in the banking system that are at 3.18 trillion now. I think they rose by about $100 billion last week because money was poured out of the reverse repo facility, but that's a different issue. I talk about that in the Endgame Investor on Substack. Please click the link in the description below to get a more coherent version of what I'm saying here, which is a little bit more rambling because tonight is Yom Kippur and I'm in a little bit of a rush. And I have to talk about wonky monetary policy nonsense that I only learned about as it's happening. So I'm just learning on the fly like all of you are. So here is Mark Cabana again, where he's quoted, like the macro neutral rate, L-CLOR is only observed near or after it is reached. We have long believed, says Mark Cabana of Bank of America, L-CLOR, lowest countable level of reserves, is around 3 to 3.25 trillion, which is exactly where we are now. Let's just skip down to Cabana's conclusions. His emphasis in bold, says Wigglesworth, repo is heart of markets. Heart of markets.
It's the beating of that hideous heart!
Heart of dark markets. EKG measures heart rate and rhythm. Yes, that's true, Mr. Cardiologist. Repo EKG flags shift. Yes, that's true, Repo EKG cardiologist monetary guy. Cash drain has supported spike in repo. Fed should take repo, pulse, and sense shift. If Fed too late to diagnose, 19 repeat, bottom line, stay short spreads with Fed behind on diagnosis.
You are great. 100,000 pesos put on show. Stop the infamous El Guapo.
Basically, what's going on here is that Cabana admits, the mainstream is admitting that we are very near the next repo crisis, which will necessitate the end of QT, of quantitative tightening, of the shrinking of the Fed's balance sheet, a move to QE, which means buying more bonds to add assets onto the Fed's balance sheet to distribute liquidity into the banking system. And once we get to that point, we're going to have a very good test of the more conspiratorial view that the medical emergency that happened in 2020 was really an excuse to print money because of the apocalypse of 2019. I am not taking a position on that. I don't really know. It is possible. I'm not rejecting it out of hand, but we're going to have a good test of that because exactly what happened in 2019 is about to happen in the next few weeks because reserve levels are falling because of the rate cut and they will continue to fall. When the next repo clog happens, they're going to switch to quantitative easing from quantitative tightening. And back in 2019, 2020, we had 5 months from the point when quantitative easing was restarted on the repocalypse of 2019 until March 2020. Nobody knows what exactly happened then. I'm not going to talk about it here because there are certain keywords that I'm really not supposed to say on this outlet. But my feeling is that we're going to get another excuse to print trillions of dollars. And I have a fear that that excuse is going to be all-out war with, God forbid, Russia involving Israel and Hezbollah and Iran and all those other players. May God bring us through the end game. Yom Kippur is tonight, 5785. The fate is sealed tonight, according to Jewish tradition. I pray that the entire world get through this end game. And if I offended any of you this past year, my apologies. Please send me an email if I really did offend you so I can apologize to you personally at Endgame Investor. I wish you all happy new year for the world, 5785, and hopefully it will be the epic of peace as described in Ecclesiastes in the book of Kohelet, written by King Solomon. The end of the epic of war, the beginning of the epic of peace and good luck to the world, and have a happy endgame to all.